All right. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special show. It's also the first time we have a show that is around noon. So I guess we could say good morning, right? We had a pretty exciting week behind us where we launched a project that we at the IOTA Foundation have been working on for the past year now. And that's obviously Shimmer. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the reasoning behind Shimmer, right? Why do we want to have an incentivized staging network? The future of Shimmer, what is its value proposition? What is its future? And how does it fit within this entire ecosystem that we're building around IOTA? We have Hans on the show today. He will join me in a couple of minutes, where he can also give his perspective on things and also give us some insights into IOTA 2.0. But without further ado, I think we should get started. And let me just quickly share my screen so I can easily explain all of these concepts. So this is probably what most of you have seen, right? The Shimmer Network, 0 fees and endless possibilities. And the description here is probably what reveals the most what Shimmer is. And what Shimmer is, it's an incentivized staging network. Now, what that is that basically with IOTA, we have to go through a series of upgrades and releases to be able to actually release the software safely on the mainnet, right? In order to make sure that every upgrade is safe, we really have to go through thorough testing and validation. And up until this point, we only had phase 1 and phase 2, and then it was released straight onto the IOTA mainnet. Right now, IOTA is undergoing a sort of transformation, right? We started with Chrysalis, where we introduced UTXO, where we introduced some simple output types on the ledger. And the narrative at the time was really clear, right? Chrysalis is there to actually enable us to bring more innovations onto the mainnet. And what we meant with that was really we wanted to introduce staking, and we wanted to introduce tokenization and smart contracts. All of that was supposed to get onto the mainnet so that we have a programmable multi-asset ledger, right? It's not just about the IOTA token being on the native layer, but it's about any kind of token, NFTs, digital representations of art, and all of that should be within this IOTA ecosystem, right? And we have a series of upgrades that are coming up right now. For one, we have the tokenization upgrade. Some of you might have already read the RFCs for that. And also very exciting is we have smart contracts. We already have the beta release of smart contracts out, and the community has been very busy in building on that testnet, and it's really exciting to see what's coming out of it. Now this is the exciting part, right? The difficult part is like, how do we actually safely upgrade the IOTA mainnet with these very exciting but also very crucial concepts? And this is exactly where Shimmer comes into place. Because what Shimmer is straight after a testnet, the Shimmer network will actually be an incentivized staging network where these upgrades are first made available. Right? So whenever our software is ready for the tokenization part and the smart contracts, Shimmer will be the first to be upgraded. And this means that the community is able to innovate on that testnet first, right? You can start building your applications knowing that it will be the exact same APIs, the exact same integrations, and so on with IOTA later on, right? So you have early access. And equally important is this validation, right? We want to have the community, and we also want to have adversaries in this network really stress test each of these upgrades so that later on the IOTA mainnet can be safely upgraded. So it's really about two things, right? We want to give our ecosystem early access to the innovations that are coming out of IOTA, tokenization, smart contracts. We want to start building the ecosystem already before, not just when the upgrade happens on the IOTA mainnet, but we really want to start ecosystem building straight out of the testnet release. And now with Shimmer, the community has an incentivized environment where they can actually build their ecosystem solutions, their dApps and all of that. And also the integrations, right? With exchanges, with other partners. Everything will be made early through Shimmer. And the other part is the validation. We want to make sure that there's as few bugs as possible so that each upgrade will be done smoothly. So this is really one of the main reasons behind doing Shimmer. And what's really exciting as well is that we have IOTA 2.0 coming up, where we just recently upgraded the DevNet, and Hans will be talking more about that. But with IOTA 2.0, we have a similar situation, right? We want to upgrade the IOTA mainnet with our new consensus and with our complete new architecture. But we want to make sure that when we do the upgrade, when we remove the coordinator, that everything can be done safely. And here again is where Shimmer comes into place, because Shimmer is this incentivized staging network, right? We want to encourage the community to participate in the network and to really validate the concepts and to grow and accelerate the adoption of these technologies together with us. So I think all of that is really exciting, and I really encourage all of you to read this blog post and to look on their website, because I think it makes it very abundantly clear why a network like Shimmer makes total sense for IOTA as we are upgrading the mainnet. And I would say our vision with IOTA has always been that we want to be the best layer one, right? We want to sort of become this layer zero on which new layer one protocols can be built on top. IOTA smart contracts, the way that it is evolving, can actually be seen as a layer one network that is built on top of this trust anchor, which is the IOTA tangle, right? And so we want to make sure that this trust anchor is always secure and is always at the forefront of innovation, because we don't want to fall behind, right? We want to accelerate, and we don't want to stop the upgrades that are coming to the mainnet. So I think this is really exciting, right? And it's something unique that we've never done before, and it's also part of this shift that we have made with IOTA, where the focus right now is clearly on utility and adoption on the mainnet, and making sure that IOTA really becomes a competitive player that is able to leverage the zero fee aspect. Cool, but so let me get Hans onto the show so that he can also explain things from his perspective. Hans, can you hear me?
Hello. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
That's perfect.
Heard you talking from the backstage here.
That's the speaker's lounge.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool,
So,
but how are you
everybody.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing much better than like last week. I mean, maybe you can see it. I still have a little bit of a scar. It's like healing, and my eye is also not bloody anymore. I also got my vaccine shot yesterday, so I have a bit of fever and I feel a bit like weak and tired. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm just sitting in front of a computer, not doing anything heavy here, so I will manage. I will pull through. If I at some point like fall from the chair or something, you know what's going on.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really great that you're on the show and able to talk about this stuff. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a perspective of what's been going on with IOTA 2.0, because I think that's something important to discuss as well, considering that we have Shimmer here.
Yeah, I mean, like people who have been following the protocol for some time know that we've been doing some updates to the consensus lately. Like in the last month, we were very busy rewriting all the code, updating and organizing and optimizing the aspects. Because we've switched to what we call untangle voting, or what was previously known as multiverse consensus. And it has been a result of like 2 years of looking at these things, discussing these things, and ultimately deciding that this is a safe path. And it's also much simpler in code. Like the whole structures, everything is cleanly separated. You have very modular design, where the actual consensus itself is like currently, I think, 170 lines of neatly isolated code. So everything is very modular, very maintainable. But it's also the first time that we have this protocol functional since like we had the idea for that, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. And it's a lot of code, so we expect there to be some bugs. It looks also like we have found one bug now, like the DevNet is currently not issuing any messages. We're going to look into that and release a new version, I guess, most probably tomorrow and the day after. And I think this also shows that there's still a lot of work to do. We need to optimize everything. We need to clean up the code. We need to test everything.
Right.
But it's very clear in what direction IOTA is moving now. It's definitely going to be one of the fastest consensus mechanisms that we have in the space. We believe it's also one of the most optimal ones when it comes to messaging complexity. Is also extremely robust and secure. It's going to be really interesting to see this in the wild. And in that context, I'm also very happy to have the Shimmer Network as a testing environment where you can release things as fast as possible, kind of without having to go through these really extended testing periods that you would have to have when you want to launch on mainnet.
Yeah, I mean, the really cool part about IOTA 2.0 is that it was sort of seen as an innovation testbed for us as well, because you probably remember, like when with the first release of colored coins on the DevNet, and now obviously also smart contracts was also released on IOTA 2.0. So sort of right now the position was that the IOTA 2.0 DevNet is where we can also integrate some of these exciting concepts that we believe are really valuable for the future, right? So tokenization was a very good example here, where now it's actually making its way into the mainnet, right? Where we have the RFCs out, and the team did a really tremendous job in updating the tokenization concept itself. So it's actually making its way from IOTA 2.0 into the IOTA mainnet. And so I think with also, Shimmer,
just one thing in between, like Levi, who has been also like the driving force behind these tokenization framework and stuff. He has done an amazing job. You know, I didn't even have the time to catch up with what these guys are working. It was a separate team, and the initial ideas were just to kind of tag existing IOTA tokens where you just give them a color, but that's not really feasible, because if you think about it, for example, one Bitcoin consists out of like, I don't know, 10 million Satoshis or 100 million or something. I don't know the exact number. But if you want to correctly wrap that, then you would need to have like 100 million IOTA tokens, kind of, right? And at the moment, one mega IOTA costs like $1.50 or something. So if you do the math, it costs like $100 or something to wrap a single Bitcoin if you would take this approach. So it's really not good. And the solution that they have come up now with these foundries and like tying everything together through backing these things with IOTA, I really like it. Like, I didn't have the time to be part of this whole development process, but just seeing what these guys have been producing, it's really amazing. And there's also something that I really like about the current situation. IOTA is just so much happening at the same time. I don't even have the time to kind of keep track of everything. We have DIDs, we have smart contracts, and it's all separate teams that are all doing things at the same time, and they're all doing a really good job. Like, when I look at what they're building, and I would have to design a similar system, I would have taken exactly the same design decisions. Yeah, that's really good. It has not always been like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful part about the way that the project is evolving, and as we also standardize the sort of governance framework around IOTA, it will be much easier for anybody to actually like give improvement proposals and make sure that the project is really at the forefront of innovation, right? And that's really been the narrative of Shimmer, because Shimmer is really meant for us to accelerate the adoption of these innovations and make sure that they're safe, right? Because doing stuff like, for example, output types can also cause disruptions in the network if there's a bug, right? So I think Shimmer is perfectly positioned to take on these challenges. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you think makes sense about Shimmer and why, like, what really got us to this stage, because there was also different considerations, right? I remember we were talking about doing bug bounty programs, or we were talking about doing, like sort of capture the flag concepts, right? Really complicated stuff. And I think ultimately what made the most sense about Shimmer is that it's the most simple approach that we can take that really adds value to the project, right? Anything else would not have been feasible.
Dom, do you hear me when I speak now? Because people say my microphone is a little bit silent. I just tried to change it in the settings, make it a little bit louder. I don't know if it's better now, or like, can people maybe give some feedback, or I don't know if this is.
I can hear you. It's very silent, they were saying. Oh, okay. Now they're saying yes.
People say it's much better. Okay, I just changed from like automatic sound settings to like manual ones. Okay, so sorry, I didn't really follow. What did you say? You asked the question.
No, I was saying. Right. No, like what I was saying is that we have all of these very exciting innovations that are coming up, right? Tokenization, smart contracts, and IOTA 2.0, which is the fully decentralized protocol. And the different approaches that we could have taken, ultimately we decided for Shimmer because it was the most simple and the most obvious choice, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, essentially, the way I see Shimmer is as like IOTA's crazy little cousin, kind of. Like it's very similar to what Polkadot has done with Kusama. They have also implemented a solution that nobody has ever really run in the real world, and there were some questions around how this would function and how you would ideally design such a system, and having the ability to just play around with concepts, just to try out different things. Is, in my opinion, very beneficial. Also, there are some decisions that are maybe a bit like, I don't know, not so clear cut. Like when it comes to the consensus, for example, you can objectively measure what is better. If you need to send less messages, if you have faster confirmations, these things are very objective. There is not much discussion around what is better. Yeah, like you can just essentially measure it, right? But when it comes to other aspects of the protocol, for example, do you want to have staking rewards or not? Do you want to have incentives to run a node and all of these kind of things? In theory, IOTA will ultimately not need these things, especially if we move to a point where we can cement finality in social consensus. Then it's kind of not really necessary anymore. But still, for bootstrapping phase, it might be beneficial for the network. And there are some design decisions in the protocol where there seems to be two options. And some people favor option A and some people favor option B. Interestingly, these options are algorithmically very similar and just turn out to be one parameter that is a little bit different. But having two networks where you can actually just deploy both versions and just see which one is doing better will ultimately be a good option, because what we don't want to do is like we want to develop this crazy technology that is like more efficient and more secure and everything, and then somebody just copies our code base, adds some staking rewards, and outperforms IOTA. That would be horrible, right? So having just these two networks also to play around with two different economic models and perceptions, philosophical point of views, I think is really interesting. And early on, this of course is going to be the staging network for IOTA, but I can totally see the two networks also diverge at some point. I mean, if both techs are done and you essentially, there is these two options that you can run, then having both options run from the same community, it makes more sense to have it being done from somebody outside, right? Yeah. And of course, there's also other innovative things that we would like to see on the protocol at some point. I'm personally, for example, very excited about layer 1 smart contracts based on UTXOs, because I think that the model that we've developed is essentially a generalized model for distributed computing, because the way you can see outputs is like, I mean, programming is usually input, processing, output. That's just like how you program. And the way we model the ledger state, where you have inputs that can be referenced by transactions and then produce outputs, is like a generalized model for computing itself, for distributed computing. And if we can do this in an optimal way, then this would be a pretty big thing. But this is a bit hard to test on the mainnet, I would say, because once you add these outputs, you cannot really take them away, Like if somebody writes a layer 1 smart contract and we figure out, oh man, like this really severely limits the scalability to degrees where it's maybe not feasible, and it would be better to have this on a second layer. Once it's there, you cannot really remove it. So it would be good to try out these things, for example, on Shimmer, which would also give Shimmer a real value proposition. It would be the first layer 1 feeless DLT in a way that supports non-totally ordered smart contracts, or like non-totally ordered, like in a total order of all smart contracts. Each smart contract in itself, of course, always requires a total order. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. We have so many things that we want to try out, or the integration of trust and stuff like that. And nobody has ever done it before. It sounds very reasonable that it can be done, but you really just know once it's live, and when people see it, it works. So,
yeah, I mean,
I'm
You're hyped.
I'm very excited. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like I already said, it made total sense, because we want to accelerate the innovation, right? And we like the main value proposition, the main argument of IOTA has always been, hey, we want to introduce a DAG architecture because the DAG is the most efficient way to do distributed ledgers, right? And it also allows us to do more innovative things, like, for example, confirming these transactions in parallel, right? And now we are building actually a smart contract network on top, and that is really what's going to give us a lot of scalability. And the main argument has always been, hey, we want to be able to reach mainstream adoption with these technologies. And right now, everything is still in the early phases where we have to test and validate like what makes sense over another concept. And the beauty that I would say has come out of crypto and DeFi in particular, it's like rapid evolution, right? If there's a protocol that makes sense, they will test like they will survive, right? And other DeFi protocols, they might be drained because they were hacked or they had vulnerabilities. And so it's like a constant fierce battle in the market of who is winning over the other, right? Which concept is better? And now with Shimmer, we're actually able to do this, this rapid evolution of innovations, right, from IOTA. And we're doing this not just on the application layer, right, not just with smart contracts, dApps, and so on and so forth, but we're also doing it on layer 1. And I really think that this combination of layer 1 and layer 2 is what will make us a very competitive platform, because we're not just copying a blockchain, adding proof of stake or delegated proof of stake, and then putting the EVM on top of it, right? It's an entire new architecture that offers builders the possibilities to really innovate and to really try out new things. So I think the argument is very clear, right? Technology validation and an innovation playground for anybody to benefit from it.
Yeah, I also think that IOTA is going to be very big in the space. I mean, I've been coding since I'm 11 years old, so I know a lot about like problems and when it comes to scaling programs, because back in the days we didn't have that much computing power, and it was very relevant to write efficient code because you could just not throw like a huge amount of computing power at the problem. And there's things like Atmann's law and like other problems that distributed systems are kind of struggling with, because you cannot really parallelize the execution of smart contracts, which limits any EVM enabled chain to something between like, I don't know, like 50 to 100 transactions per second. You know, it cannot really run on multiple cores because you always need to have this total order. You need to execute all the contracts in total order. And if you want to overcome these limitations, then you need a completely different technology. And IOTA has the potential to solve these problems, because you can not only state shard the outputs, like the state itself, it's not in one monolithic block. Each output is its isolated state. You can make it so some nodes store this state, some nodes store another state. Like I've, for example, also kind of hinted at already when I described these fluid sharding early ideas. This is something you cannot do with a blockchain. It's impossible, you know, because a blockchain is inherently the single thread of information. And it solves so many problems in such a simple way. Right. I think it's going to be really, really big. And people really also need to, like, I think people haven't really understood what we have built here. Like it's going to be extremely exciting also for all the researchers to catch up and to explore what what our data structure essentially can do. I've also been writing with some researchers from other ecosystems, and everybody who has seen the solutions was extremely excited, and people discovered aspects of it that I was completely unaware, and they said, oh, wait, you're solving this problem as well, you know? And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I didn't even know that was considered to be a problem before, you know? And it's going to take a lot of time to actually explore what the thing that we've built actually means in a way, you know. It's like, what is this? Like, it's also very hard to put words on it. Like some people say it's probabilistic, some people say it's deterministic. It's like something in between. It's just like so different. And I think it's going to be a good way for us to also raise awareness about the technology that we've built. We don't have to wait like another year until everything has been battle tested, 4 months until we can release it, but we can essentially release it as soon as we're ready, right? Exactly. So having this network is definitely going to speed up the whole development process, and also the awareness that's been raised. Like that, we can see it already now from outside researchers, but the investors have not really discovered IOTA yet, I would say. Like we're still like a little bit flying under the radar. And it's really exciting. It's going to be exciting to see what's going to happen from now on.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what makes it so exciting, right? The uphill battle of crypto. But just to go on that point, right? I think it's a very important point actually, because Shimmer will be the first one to have IOTA 2.0, right? Right now we have the DevNet, and it's very exciting. And the community has been absolutely phenomenal, right? I think we had like 300, 400 nodes at a time. And so it has activity from... Yeah.
We have 15 times more nodes than Hashgraph has on the mainnet in our DevNet, for example, right? Like they have 20, we have 300. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not even an incentive; it's just a test net for now, right? And so with Shimmer, with actual incentives embedded into the protocol, and it being its own layer 1 network, it will be much easier to also prove to other people that IOTA 2.0 is really one of the best DLT solutions out there. And also invite them to innovate together with us, because research papers are phenomenal, a phenomenal way to get credibility. But I think the best way to prove that it's all working and that it's all really as good as we are telling is by having it on the mainnet. And the Shimmer mainnet will be the first one to have IOTA 2.0. So I think that will be...
definitely. I also don't think that people care too much about papers. Of course, academic validation is important, and you want to have insight from other researchers and stuff like that. But the real deal is just being live on a network. Like then you can say, like, if somebody says like, it's not going to work, and say like, well, then just break it. There's no discussion about that anymore. Currently, there's a lot of people who are saying like, it's never going to work and it's unsecure and whatever. And whenever you ask them about the reason, they can't say it. They can't say like, this specific problem is not going to work. They just say like, it sounds way too amazing. If that would work, that would be unbelievable, kind of. And it's really interesting. Also, when I started to get into IOTA, I heard about these concepts, like how it's supposed to work. I didn't know much about DLTs, and I didn't know that a lot of the things that IOTA claimed were considered to be completely impossible by most serious researchers, but my gut feeling told me like, okay, this should work, and then it didn't. Like our early IOTA 1.0, everything was falling apart, and for a really long time I was like reading all the white papers. I read all the information that I could read on distributed consensus, just trying to find somebody who maybe has worked on something similar, but it didn't exist. Nobody had ever come across a similar problem. So then there were only two options: either we are wrong, or the entire literature on DLTs on DLT space is wrong. And it turned out to be the later case. I mean, it's not wrong, but there is another option to solve conflicts that is not based on a total order. And that's just, if you understand how conflicts work, then you can just vote on the conflicts instead of on time, and it works as well. And it turns out to be much simpler, much more efficient, and much more elegant if you do it that way. And it kind of also makes sense, because nodes in a distributed network, they don't have the same perception of time. It kind of makes no sense to try to build a system that is based on these principles. It's like trying to make a penguin fly, I mean, maybe you can do it if you build some really huge wings and he's like practicing every day, but it's never going to feel as natural and as easy as IOTA will feel, especially once we add additional elements on top. Everything is so nicely structured and separated. Like, you can have meta protocols, for example. Every single innovation that somebody could possibly come up with when it comes to the point of consensus, we can implement that as well, but on top of our virtual voting mechanism. Right. So in the same way as, like, for example, Bitcoin samples a random subset of the people to become the leader, or like Ethereum chooses like 32 leaders for each epoch or round, you can do essentially the same thing in IOTA. You could do that as well. So if the weight distribution of the validators is not ideal, then you can just do that, and you can have the same finality times and everything else like everybody else. So that's also why I usually say it's the best consensus you could possibly ever build, because it's so extendable, so dynamic, so flexible. Whatever anybody is doing, you could do it here as well, but it would be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more secure, and a little bit more robust.
Yeah, I mean, we have an entire roadmap of things to try out on Shimmer, and maybe like we're talking about IOTA 2.0 right now, because IOTA 2.0 is really the main reason why we actually announced Shimmer, right? We always needed this incentivized staging network for IOTA 2.0 and the eventual core side of IOTA. But the way that the network will launch, Shimmer will launch, is actually with the tokenization framework and with smart contracts. So we're starting with the utility upgrade that is coming, so that all of you can start building and innovating on top of Shimmer. We already have several DEXs in the IOTA ecosystem, like Tanglesea, the NFT marketplace, and some other very exciting applications that haven't been announced yet that are going to launch on Shimmer. And so that actually gives them this early testing ground, so that when the tokenization upgrade and the smart contracts are coming onto the IOTA mainnet, the entire ecosystem will be ready. And that's a very exciting thought, because that means that we're not starting ecosystem building with Shimmer, with IOTA. We're starting ecosystem building with Shimmer, right? And that's what really will allow us to grow and accelerate our adoption, and also catch up with the others, because quite frankly, we are behind the others right now, right? And we have invested a lot of time and a lot of resources into IOTA 2.0 to really think through this entire architecture. And we're not just building the layer one, we've built the entire stack, right? And reinvented the DAG, so to say, so that we really become the most efficient way to do DLTs on a DAG. So, and right now the goal is to prepare for these upgrades, so that when they hit the mainnet, that we have an ecosystem and that we have adoption already. And also, by the way, like, this also means all of these transitions that have to happen, right? From one upgrade, from one node software to the other. Like, for example, what we did with Chrysalis, where we had an entire token migration. All of that can now be done through Shimmer as well. And so we can run through the entire cycle. Once, to make sure that every token holder, that every user and every application, every exchange on the IOTA and on the Shimmer network can go through a secure and safe and also seamless upgrade process.
I wanted to say one last thing, because you said we're a little bit behind the competition in the market. I agree there with you, like, especially when it comes to DeFi.
On the utilities front, by the way.
Yeah,
like on the adoption
side. When it comes to the adoption, just because you couldn't do much with the IOTA token so far, right? So there hasn't been too many builders. But since we're looking for EVM compatibility, a lot of the programs and concepts that are successful in other networks can essentially be ported relatively easy also to the IOTA network. So I don't really see that as a huge downside. I see it more as a possibility to also learn from others and maybe take ideas from here and there. Like, I mean, if there is a good idea in some of other network, whatever it might be, people can just bring it up. We can discuss it. Maybe it become part of the IOTA protocol. And I see this also as a big chance to like not have to go through the same research and the same mistakes that other people made, and just like build on top of what others have already figured out.
Totally. And I mean, like, all the output stuff and layer one smart contracts. I think Cardano has done a pretty good job at that, and the only problem is that they're based on a blockchain, so we can actually benefit from some of their research or also others, right?
But it's really interesting, because Cardano, for example, also has recognized that to really scale up the execution of smart contracts, you kind of need to parallelize the execution of the individual smart contracts. You cannot just have one CPU processing through all of these smart contracts and chain. It doesn't work. It won't scale to the amount of people, like, throughput that you maybe want to see at some point. Maybe you want at some point have like 1,000 or 5,000 smart contract TPS or something, right? And you can only do that by scaling it, by parallelizing the work. And they think it's an important enough topic to still go this way, even if their tech only supports 0.05 TPS per smart contract, which I think is a bit low. We will see how it goes with them, because you can still like parallelize also the execution of similar contracts and stuff like that. I think we would more, like, if we would implement L1 smart contracts, it's currently not on the roadmap, but I really would like to go there. And I think in Shimmer we can experiment there. I think we will be around 5 to 6 TPS, which would be like, I don't know, like around the things that you can achieve reasonably with a network delay of like 150, 160 milliseconds or something between the hops. And I think that would definitely be usable. Like, everything that is faster than that, especially in the realm of DeFi, doesn't really make that much sense, because then the price changes more often per second than you can reasonably do arbitrage trades and stuff like that. So I don't think that DeFi smart contracts will exceed these TPS per instance. Like, you can have multiple instances, of course, but
right. I mean, and that's just on layer one, right? Like a specific implementation of layer one smart contracts. But like the real beauty of what we're building is the combination of layer one and layer two. Yeah. Right, where we have this.
But people are asking if we can go to the AMA session where people may ask questions.
So let me just quickly go through the token. I just want to do the last point, because I think that's an important part to mention here. Because like, what gives this the incentives, right? And what makes Shimmer so unique is that it's its own network, it's its own token economy with the Shimmer token. And the Shimmer token is really what makes this work, because the Shimmer token is the one there to secure the network, right? So you will actually be rewarded for staking your tokens and securing the network by generating mana, right? And equally important is really this utility of the Shimmer token. And the utility of the Shimmer token will be realized through the ecosystem that is building on top of Shimmer. And so, for example, the Tangle C guys, the DEXs that are being built on top of Shimmer, they will be able to experiment. They will be able to fine-tune and optimize their applications, and also build up their own communities on Shimmer by enabling Shimmer token holders and community members to do yield farming, to do participate in the ecosystem, and try things out with their tokens. And the last point that I wanted to make is that the potential of Shimmer has to be realized by its community, right? It's up to the ecosystem to really give the token and to give the network its utility and its value. Our focus is on this being an incentivized staging network, right? We want to do technology validation, and we want to accelerate our innovation. And it's up to the community to really participate and to realize this potential. And that's also why community governance will be a core focus of the Shimmer network, where we also really going to set up several DAOs. For example, right now the community is talking about the community treasury on the IOTA network, where there will be an upcoming vote. And so the Shimmer network will actually be this testbed also for DAOs and for the governance of the network itself. And yeah, I mean, the rest is pretty well explained on the website. And maybe one final point is that if you want to get Shimmer tokens, we are going to announce the start of IOTA staking very soon. So you will be able to stake your IOTA tokens and receive Shimmer tokens in the form of airdrops. Every 10 seconds for one MIOTA, 1 million IOTA tokens that you're staking, you will get one Shimmer token. And this will continue for the next 90 days then, once it's announced. But we'll do more about the IOTA staking and about the Shimmer token generation. Just so you know, all Shimmer tokens will be airdropped through this staking mechanism. So there's no pre-mine, nothing else.
I mean, it's technically, it's not really staking, because you don't lock up your funds,
exactly,
right? But yeah, I wonder.
I mean, the mechanism through this is like a lock drop, basically. You lock, you hold your tokens, and through that you provide your stake, right? And through that you get access to the airdrop, basically. Cool, and it will all be done within the Firefly wallet, by the way. So it will be as simple as possible. But let's move to the AMA. So we have enough questions to go through. Let me just reload the page. Can you see it? Well, should I zoom in a little bit? Yeah.
No, I can read it.
A little bit. Cool. Let's start with the first question. My understanding is that Shimmer will be sort of like the fight arena or dungeon for IOTA. It's kind of a cool description. Where updates will be validated and battle tested before it reaches the IOTA network. However, further down the road, once both 2.0 and sharding is implemented, wouldn't it then be two identical networks in terms of usability, implementations, and so on? Two bigger differences might be Shimmer has inflation, possibly different ecosystems and communities, or have I missed something? You want to take it?
I mean, I can say something. We have kind of talked about this already a little bit, where I said that there are some design decisions in the protocol where it's not really clear which one is the better version. Like, for example, when it comes to the congestion control, we kind of have two options how we can do it. And some people favor version A, some people favor version B. And then there's like arguments for the one version and arguments for the other version, and it's kind of not really so easy to decide what you want to do. So having these two networks where you can essentially just deploy these two versions and you see like which one does better in the real world is an incredible benefit. Like if you can only design one network, but there are options where you are not really sure what you should do, then having the ability to have these two networks be slightly differently configured, of course having more or less the same features, is still a good thing, because then nobody else can just like copy it and fork the network and make it a little bit more attractive because they think, oh, maybe we like option A better, right? So I think in general, Shimmer and IOTA will diverge at some point. As I don't know in what regards. I hope that the community will also take a lot of influence here in the network. I mean, it's not run officially by the IOTA Foundation, right? I mean, of course, the technology is kind of coming from us, but I think the community can also try to have a voice in how this whole thing should develop, what protocol additions should be added, and all of these kind of things. Early on, of course, we would like to try to have it as a testing network, but after things have matured and it's no longer necessary to have that as an actual testing network, I mean, they can do whatever they want, right? It's a new ecosystem, it's a new coin. And I think IOTA and Shimmer will be one of the most efficient, or the most efficient DLTs that we currently know, and will both be very competitive in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, right, the value of Shimmer is realized through its ecosystem and its community. So it should be seen as its own network and its own community that is flourishing and growing. We already had some investors reach out and talk about that when they can actually buy Shimmer tokens and invest into the ecosystem. So it's kind of funny because people realize this is an entire new ecosystem, right? And it's early stage. And the value proposition is kind of obvious in that regard, to be early and to take those risks and to realize its future. So I also think in the future they might diverge, but for now the focus is really on being the staging network for IOTA and to help accelerate the core site and IOTA becoming a standard. Hi Dom, hi Hans. Question for Hans: how is DevNet testing going so far? Any surprises or interesting learnings came out of it already? I think you already kind of answered that.
Yeah, we kind of answered that already. So far, everything looks exactly how we envisioned it to go. I mean, of course, there's still some bugs that you need to fix. Like we have seen like some race conditions where a node crashes and now the nodes don't issue any messages anymore. We need to see what is the reason for that. But when it comes to actual validation of the core concepts, the principles that we use for consensus, everything works perfectly fine. We have resolved tens of thousands of conflicts already on the public DevNet usually within maximum 2 seconds or something. We could make confirmations even faster. We could make confirmations like 2 or 3 times faster even. But the faster we want to go, the more messaging complexity you have, because the more often nodes would need to make statements and stuff like that. So I think currently 2 seconds seems to be a good sweet spot. You don't send messages too often. You have a pretty neat and fast confirmation times. Yes, then there's a second question. We can see approximate 2 second confirmation time. There will be many times more nodes. Will that noticeably increase the confirmation times? No, actually, IOTA's consensus is a virtual voting mechanism, which means that the amount of network participants is not really that relevant for the confirmation times. What is more relevant is how the weight or the influence in the consensus is distributed between these nodes. So that means if you would, for example, have 1 million nodes that have all exactly the same weight, then collecting 50% of their messages or like of their statements will of course take much longer. And that's also what I said early on. What you can do in such a scenario, like we don't expect this situation. We expect that the weight in the network will be somewhat centralized because that's how it is in all other networks, and it's following a zip distribution. It's a distribution that you see everywhere in the nature, and also like in society, there are some people who have a lot of money, and then there's like a few that have a little bit less, and then it kind of like falls off very steeply, so that you can say like the top 50 wealthiest individuals in the world have most of the money, for example. And the same thing holds true in DLT. So we kind of expect the weight to be somewhat centralized. So I don't think it might not necessarily be necessary to work on these meta protocols that I talked about earlier. But if it would ever be the case that you would have a very even distribution of weight, then you could also address this just by making a subset of all validators make their statements quite regularly. So no, I don't think that the confirmation times will get much worse. I think they might even get faster, because we can optimize some parameters, and we will get rid of proof of work and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. 1 or 2 seconds sounds fucking amazing. Like when I used it for the first time, it was pretty beautiful. Next question is for me. Is it fair to say that the lack of a custody provider is currently the biggest blocker to get more listings on exchanges in the US? Is there any progress on getting custody provider? Totally. I mean, the custody providers are sort of the new gateways that are blocking access to the market. And so We are working on it, and we are talking with 2 of them right now, actually. But we'll see more soon. By the way, I think I have to sort here differently. Instead of best, top, I already saw comments that complained. All right, different question now. Comparisons have been made between Kusama, Polkadot, and IOTA Shimmer. What's the vision of Shimmer in a way based on Kusama, and what strengths, weaknesses does the AF team want to keep or solve when compared to Kusama? I mean, of course, Polkadot has proven the concept with Kusama, and props to them. They've done a pretty terrific job in launching the network. And I think the first, I remember the first Ethereum testnet was actually also sort of incentivized, the Olympus network, where miners also got tokens, which were later redeemed on the mainnet, and so on and so forth. And Shimmer is really based on those 2 concepts the most, I would say. The major difference between Kusama and Polkadot is that with IOTA and Shimmer, we don't have a concept of cheaper transactions or cheaper parachain slots or more staking rewards compared to Kusama and Polkadot, right? And the major idea here is that it's really a staging network for IOTA, and so that it will be its own mainnet and will be its own ecosystem that will validate the technology and also enable people to be early and get early access to applications.
I wouldn't necessarily say, like, for example, this layer 1 smart contracts, it's really not clear if we want to have that on mainnet or not, but we would like to try it out on Shimmer. So there's still going to be differences eventually down the line, but we will see how it goes. Like, if it scales, fine. Of course, why would we not add it to Shimmer as well, right?
Totally. It's an innovation playground. And so the concept definitely differs from Kusama and Polkadot. Like, the relationship between IOTA and Shimmer is different, because in Polkadot and Kusama, it's really also about having cheaper transactions, right? And more access, giving people more access, because the parachain slots are limited. I think it was like 120.
Incredibly expensive or something.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have those problems with IOTA and Shimmer. So the relationship is slightly different. But yeah, it's a similar idea, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You are planning to bring Shimmer token on exchange, Dom's Twitter post. First of all, I've never said that. that is really not our role, I would say, because this is going to be up to the community and the ecosystem to get Shimmer listed. And we already had some exchanges that actually reached out to us, because basically the code base is very similar. So if an exchange already has IOTA listed, it should be relatively easy for them to also list Shimmer. And then afterwards, they will obviously have to go through all of the upgrades and updates. But we are not the ones that are actively pushing for this, right? And I want to really highlight that point, because it's not up to us to bring value to the Shimmer token. Our objective is technology validation. The ecosystem is there to bring utility and value. But let me continue with the question. How should that work when exchanges are ignoring IOTA and the few IOTA exchanges are not able to manage functions like withdraw? I think the situation has actually improved quite a lot with exchanges. All of them are terribly overloaded and busy right now. And so it's not just IOTA that has reliability issues, but also other networks. But I would say that especially now with Shimmer and with smart contracts and with tokenization, the value proposition of listing IOTA on the bigger exchanges also becomes much clearer and much more obvious for them, right? Because if you list IOTA with the tokenization upgrade in the future, you can easily then also integrate all of the other tokens that are being launched on top of the IOTA network. So it's not just that you're listing a token, you're listing an entire ecosystem. And the same is true with Shimmer then.
Yeah, I think also a lot of exchanges just got overwhelmed by all the people trying to withdraw their tokens, right? And usually they don't have all the tokens in a hot wallet where like the programs and stuff can access it for immediate payout, but a large part of the token holdings of exchanges is usually in cold wallets, which have to be manually like then refilling the hot wallet and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the withdrawals, they were stuck because they just never have seen such a huge amount of people trying to withdraw their tokens, right? So they didn't have that many tokens on their hot wallets. So I think it's somewhat understandable, but it's also going to be, I mean, it's IOTA is going to be much more attractive as a token in the future. You will be able to do all kinds of things, and also use it for DeFi then and stuff like that. So I think that's just going to be the new norm. They will just adjust their internal behaviors and routines, and then that should ideally also not happen anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Dom and Hans, you had mentioned that ShimmerNet had been in the works for about a year, roughly the same time period as the original posting of the EPSI contest. Really, EPSI is a year away already. It's kind of crazy. Part of the EPSI criteria requires projects to provide solutions for enabling reward and incentive models to be exploited through tokenized approaches. Thus, the release of Shimmer helped to satisfy one of the few unmarked facets necessary for acceptance. And did this contest have any bearing on its conception? I know this question may not feel valuable, but my curiosity piqued after putting a few puzzle pieces together. Quite honestly, I never heard about this. So that's kind of funny. To be honest, EPSI didn't have any influence over Shimmer. It was really just the problem that we faced at the time. It was like how to validate and test IOTA 2.0 before the core decided on the mainnet. And it was really just us looking within the crypto space what options we had, and it wasn't influenced by EPSI at all. But obviously, now that you mentioned it, it kind of makes sense.
I think what's also important to understand for people is that IOTA didn't go through a similar ICO as many other projects, right? We haven't collected hundreds of millions of dollars in investment money from other people. When IOTA launched, I think the IOTA Foundation had like $10,000 or $5,000 that were donated, the equivalent back then, to found the IOTA Foundation. And from this money, we're still living up till today, paying all the people. Of course, the money has risen due to IOTA's price, getting more expensive and stuff like that. But the total amount of money that was raised in the ICO, correct me if I'm wrong, Dom, but I think it was $500,000 equivalent in Bitcoin back then. And then 5% of that money was donated to the AF to develop, or like 10%, I don't know.
5%
but
of the token supply.
5% of the token supply. So that was not a lot of money. And I mean, we are doing okay, but we can pay all the employees and stuff, but we could definitely not hand out like hundreds of millions of dollars in rewards. And I think you would need to have a lot of money to really have an incentive for people to actually break the network. So I think the only real option that kind of makes sense is such a public staking network, where you can just like try out things. And if somebody thinks he can break it and it has monetary value, well, then do it. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to do it, but
exactly. Cool. The next question. The announcements so far indicate 2 staking periods. Pre-Genesis, a 90-day period where IOTA may be locked on a mainnet address to calculate the initial Shimmer distribution on the ShimmerNet. And the post-Genesis, ongoing, where Shimmer token may be staked to secure the Shimmer network for an APY return. Can you elaborate on how staking in a post-Genesis period works to secure the network? Maybe you want to talk about mana and how that helps?
Me? No, to be honest, I don't know. I haven't really looked into the Shimmer network incentive structures because we've been so busy with our DevNet stuff. I have to catch up with what exactly has been planned there also regarding the incentive structure.
Right. I mean, the way that it's going to work is that we have to do the token distribution before the launch of the Shimmer network, right?
Yeah,
so
that is clear. That makes sense. Like the pre-Genesis staking period kind of just benefits the IOTA holders over like some random people who just buy IOTA for a few seconds and then just sell it again to be in the Genesis snapshot, right? Exactly. I think that makes a lot of sense. But post Genesis, to me, the description on the network looks like there would be a real proof of stake or something in that regards. I haven't really digged into that so much because the announcement also it's just a few days old and it's been developing by a different team. So I don't know.
I mean, the way that it's going to work is that it's basically an added incentive for generating mana, right? So you generate mana. Usually in a blockchain, you get your staking rewards consists of the share of the inflation, right? Newly minted tokens that are being distributed to stakers, and the transaction fees that are being collected with each block. And the way that it works with Shimmer actually is that your staking rewards will be the mana that you're generating that gives you access throughput to the network and the share of the inflation. So it's like an added incentive to generating Mana, which obviously secures the network. And as you already mentioned before, with Shimmer, we really want to also innovate and test some of these concepts and not just try new technology innovations, but also really try new economic innovations. And I would say that staking and earning more tokens by securing the network and stuff like that has been on our list for quite some time. And now with Shimmer, we're actually able to experiment on this and provide some incentives for token holders to secure the network. Yeah. But we will definitely also share more information about how this will all work, right? Right now, we didn't want to overload everybody with too much information because there's some crucial details that have to be defined then. And it takes a lot of time to distribute them. Maybe this question for the post-Genesis staking, please also explain this in the context.
Short question, because somebody just said I need to work on the way I speak. Am I speaking too fast, or do I use weird words or something? I mean, I always try to get better. Maybe the person who has mentioned that can be a bit more specific.
I don't know. You sound fine to me.
I don't know.
But this question was, please also explain this in the context of tax-relevant terms. Is it real staking, POS, or also a rolling airdrop? And that would then be real staking on Shimmer.
Yeah, I would also, I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to law, but I would say the later staking would be a real staking. That's how it sounds to me. The previous one, I don't know. You don't really receive tokens immediately, right? You just distribute the Genesis snapshot, so it's not really worth anything by the time that the thing launches. Maybe then it's going to be worth something, but in the moment you receive your spot in the snapshot, you don't really receive anything in that regard. I don't know. Maybe there's some creative solution for also the German users and other people from countries who have problems with like staking.
I'm going to be very honest here. The way that the German tax law is being proposed right now, it's basically an entire country is being excluded from staking and from securing the networks that you participate in, and from participating in yield farming and DeFi, and it's just absolutely absurd. So hopefully there will be some changes, but we can't advise on tech stuff, right? So this question we already did. Will we be able to see how many Shimmer we have on the Firefly wallet? So there will be two displays, one for IOTA and the other for Shimmer. Yes, you will be able to see it in real time. Definitely. And the Shimmer flow will be very nice and very easy to use for the staking. Do you have a plan to bring monetary value to the Shimmer token? If yes, how do you want to do this? Thanks. Again, it's up to the ecosystem and up to the community to realize the potential of Shimmer. We already know of a few dApps that are going to launch. And ultimately, the ecosystem is what gives it value, right? The utility that is being brought to the token is what gives it value. And we are really here to help launch the network, and then the rest will be developed by all of you, right? And I think it's also an exciting opportunity to be early, because now you don't have to wait for things to hit the mainnet. You can actually deploy and test on the Shimmer network already. You can build your brand, build your application, and grow your ecosystem and your community.
Yeah, I think also like if it has utility, it will be worth something, even if it's not a lot of money early on, and people will realize that. There will be people who try to buy tokens early for very, very cheap to maybe make a good profit later on once the price has risen. So I think it's very, like, it can be expected that there will be a value associated to these tokens. Initially, it will most probably not be super high, but if people realize the technology works and it works fast and it works secure, and it's going to be an ecosystem that stays and that is not going to go away, then of course these things will have value. And I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen. It might be the case that maybe the staking incentivized network is more attractive than the IOTA network, for example, and eventually these Shimmer tokens would be more worth than IOTAs. Of course, it's not really something that we anticipate, but it could happen. And I mean, one has to be aware of that, especially with IOTA's history, that people might be more perceptive to such a new network than an old one. I mean, it could happen. Who knows? You know, we will see. It's going to be exciting to see. But the good thing is everybody who has IOTA tokens now can be part of the game.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean,
it's
like,
not that anybody is left behind, because there were also some discussions from people like back in the days who asked like, why don't you just create a new token and throw away IOTA and stuff? You can't really do that, like the money for the development, all the trust that the community has given us over all the years, it's all a result of the community. I'm also a community member. I'm not like, I joined 2 years ago as a community developer who was a bit frustrated that everything was so closed source and nothing worked, and I tried to help, and together we found the solutions, and it's really interesting, and I think the technology is going to be amazing. But at the end of the day, this is a community project, and now we have two.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really about both working together, right? Because the Shimmer Network is really positioned to accelerate the adoption of IOTA and bring these crucial innovations to the mainnet. And I know there was a question like this before, but like we discussed it before we hopped on, like about staking rewards, right? If staking rewards prove to be a big success on the Shimmer Network, we would then leave it up to the community on the IOTA network to have a governance vote if they also want to introduce staking rewards with the IOTA 2.0 release, right? Anything is possible, and yeah, it will be up to the ecosystem and the community to decide on this stuff. And obviously, Shimmer will also launch with all these utility functions like smart contracts, tokenization, and enable people to build. This question we already had. Will there be a bug bounty program for ShimmerNet? It has been speculated that the incentive for White Grey Hat is to steal Shimmer tokens, but this depends on the Shimmer becoming valuable, and it will only cover fund stealing vulnerabilities, not, for example, consensus stalling or privacy leaking vulnerabilities. There will definitely still be a bug bounty program. We're actually thinking of different ways in which we can incentivize these hackers also through decentralized exchanges. But maybe if you have some suggestions as well of what you would want to see, please contact us. Go on Discord and share your ideas. But this is definitely also part of the roadmap still. Oh wait, there's another question. Since I wanted to say, as addition to it, even for something like a double spend vulnerability and the theoretical future where Shimmer is listed on exchanges, I don't think the average exchange will consider you a white hat hacker if you do a double spend attack on them and run off with the funds. I mean, that is really what Shimmer is for, right? If there is a vulnerability, people have an incentive to exploit it and to attack it, because otherwise the network wouldn't make sense. Otherwise, it's just another testnet, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good and valid question, as always, by Scissors. Critical community member. I really value his input. Also, the ideas for meta protocols and stuff go back to me discussing things with him. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a risk for exchanges to list this token while everything is completely new. Of course, maybe early on there will be some smaller exchanges, and then as the network proves itself, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And it's essentially the same as what happened with Kusama. They also started very cheaply. I think they were not even a cent or something worth. Now they are like $300. And early on, nobody really touched them. Some people were smart enough to buy a lot of these tokens very cheaply, and then got very rich in the process of these tokens proving themselves in the real world. And I think something similar will happen in IOTA. We will most probably not list on Coinbase immediately or any of the bigger exchanges. But it can happen relatively fast. I also think that the concepts behind our consensus are relatively simple. I mean, ultimately, it's just Nakamoto with a block size of 1, right? And a data structure that allows us to track all of these approval weights. So it's not really completely not understandable by people. Like somebody who knows how Bitcoin works can, in theory, understand quite easily how IOTA works. And it's also reasonable to assume that this works okay. Especially in the happy case when you don't have large-scale network splits where you have like 50-50 network separations and stuff like that. Of course, there's always theoretical issues where such a fast confirming network could, in theory, run into problems, and we're going to try to solve that also with the integration of real-world trust, which then acts as a eclipse protection, stuff like that. But yeah, I think it is possible to understand how everything works and to feel relatively confident that if there's no bugs in the code itself, that this should be fine.
Yeah. Cool. Let's do 2 more questions. Then we can conclude. For Hans, hope you're recovering well. Can you tell us more about the long-term vision for IOTA's monetary policy? Shimmer has inflation staking. And recently you've been talking about the need for network incentives. So I ask, which model is better for the tangle? ETH's minimum viable issuance or Bitcoin's tapering rewards?
Oh, well, that's a hard question. I would say there is no, I mean, currently the long-term vision has been before to just be fixed supply, because there's no miners and there's no need to like hand out these kind of rewards ultimately. But there is, of course, real economic considerations where you say that a moderate inflation is usually good for society because it prevents people hoarding their money. It's more like better to like reinvest the money into projects to make a profit. If you have a deflationary currency, these things are not so easy to do, and there's a big discussions if a deflationary currency is actually good. We can't really know because it has never really existed in this in this world. I mean, there were some exceptions in the medieval times. We had the bracteates, and then there was also the shekel or something, which was a deflationary currency back in early Mesopotamia. So there's some experience in that regards, but I would personally maybe not consider myself to be the expert that makes an ultimate decision on that. I think we need to bring in economic, like people that have studied economics. They need to have a discussion. The community needs to discuss these things. I think it might be better ultimately to have a system that has a moderate inflation, but it might also not be. I don't know. I don't have a very strong opinion on this. I think the community should discuss these things. The only thing that I wanted to do with the post that I tweeted there was I wanted to highlight that this is actually a point that should be discussable. I mean, we've changed everything in the protocol. We've gotten rid of ternary. We've gotten rid of the random walk. Like everything is new. Of course, we should also not be afraid to ask these kind of questions and say like, okay, maybe the early design decisions turn out to be suboptimal because staking incentivizes this whole network effect and the early adopters and things like that, right? So maybe it's good to have something like that, but maybe it's also not good. Maybe it's good to have it for some time and then fade it out in the same way as Bitcoin is doing it. There's a lot of options, and we just should have this discussion. And I think also now with Shimmer, we have the ability to test these things and just see how they develop, and just like have one model here and another model there. And then we can ultimately compare. So it's not so much about personal opinion, but actual real world observation. What is the better solution here?
Exactly. And I mean, what the approach that we're taking with IOTA is that, as you already said, right, everything can be questioned, should be questioned, right? And especially those decisions that were made in the past. We need to look at the obvious facts and the obvious data. And the intention with Shimmer is to innovate on tokenomics as well, right? That's why we're launching with staking and with monetary, like token inflation, to figure out what is the best approach. And we are already speaking with some economists and are inviting them to the Shimmer Network to actually define the best model, right? Because right now everybody just has assumptions. So
I just want to say, because somebody said I'm head of research. I'm not. I'm just a junior developer in the IOTA Foundation.
You're a community member.
Billy is our head of research. No, I'm just a normal dude from the foundation. I just happen to tweet a bit more often than the others, but apart from that.
Well, I wouldn't really call you junior developer. It's more like senior.
But that's what I applied for, because I didn't want to lead a team, because I suck so hard with like timelines and dates and estimates. I always things get done much faster than they actually are.
Yeah, that's funny. Does the launch of Shimmer mean that UTXO output types ISCP requires a lot more testing, or is it mainly meant for codicide, sharding, etc.? Yes, of course, it means that we also will need more testing for the output types in particular, because they actually introduce some complexities on the protocol, and we need to test and validate them so that there's no potential conflict in the future that could halt the network, for example. So Shimmer is there to test and validate all of that. And the same will be true with smart contracts, but smart contracts is a rather simple way that it's running on top of IOTA. And so it's more like testing the network itself. The next question is when? Maybe, so this will, let's maybe conclude, right? When is the important question? And we will share more about the staking start soon. We will also invite the community to actually try out the software with us. The community is already testing it, actually, with the Hornet release. And so that you can download the plugin and you can validate all of the staking rewards that are to be distributed. And we will then do an audit on Firefly and we'll start the staking. And we're thinking about changing the announcement timeline, by the way. So instead of 24 hours before, we might do it 48 hours before. The main reason why we did that, by the way, is to really make it as fair as possible for everybody, so that nobody could like cheat the system, or there will be a big rush all of a sudden. Like we already saw that with the exchanges that stopped withdrawal. So it's better to announce it before, and the people already start preparing for the staking now by getting your tokens to the Firefly wallet, because the Firefly wallet will be the only way that you will be able to participate in the staking unless an exchange will support it. But we're not having any such discussions right now. But other than that, I think it's a pretty exciting network, and we are going to do a lot more than just what we discussed, because there's going to be a lot of ideas and a lot of creative ways in which we want to empower all of you to participate in Shimmer, and to also grow it together. Because that's the ultimate objective here, right? IOTA is a community project. Shimmer is a community project. And our job at the IOTA Foundation is to empower the community and empower all of you to have the right tools, to have the right technologies, and to have the right token economics, token incentives to grow and build up these huge ecosystems. So we have great aspirations. We have great goals for the future. And we're pretty confident that we'll be able to take on the world with IOTA smart contracts, IOTA 2.0, and the output types and everything that comes after that. Maybe any final words from you, Hans, before we close off?
I don't know. There have been also some questions in the chat. Maybe it makes sense to also answer them for a few minutes.
If you have any,
I mean, there was somebody who just asked, for example, will the final consensus model need proof of work? No, it won't. That's at least the vision. I mean, we will need to see how the whole congestion control runs, if anybody can spam as much as they want for essentially free. And maybe it makes sense to have a very small amount of proof of work to just prevent like the craziest burst attacks. But in theory, the congestion control should be able to handle the situation. And there will not be any proof of work.
Yeah, I mean, about IOTA 2.0, I think we'll be able to do another full session once the congestion control and the last modules are also upgraded, right, on the DevNet. So we can also do a dedicated stream about it. I think that would be pretty nice. So people can also ask questions, and we can do like live installs and all of that.
Yeah, people also asked why such a big amount of SMR rewards. I don't think it's a big amount. Like 1 mega IOTA, 1 million IOTA will give you 1 SMR.
Yeah.
So, I mean, every 10 seconds, of course, but I mean, it's 1 million times less already. So,
yeah, roughly the supply will be 25 to 50% of the IOTA supply afterwards, depending on the amount of staking of people. Funny is we already saw more people migrate their tokens from the old legacy network to the Chrysalis network, and I think right now we are close to, I would say, 82% migrated. Yeah, 82% migrated. So
I haven't migrated yet.
Yeah, you haven't migrated yet.
No, I haven't migrated yet. I mean, I need to find my stupid ledger. It's somewhere in the box I haven't unpacked yet. Otherwise,
you should migrate in time.
Yeah,
but it will be.
It's still there, and I didn't lose it or something. That would be pretty bad.
You should definitely do that now. Get ready for the staking. No, but cool. So thanks a lot, Hans. Thanks a lot, everybody, for watching. We will do a lot more content, and also invite you guys to the Discord and to innovate together with us. So this is a very exciting journey that we're taking, and we are very happy to do it with all of you. And so I hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of your Monday, and a wonderful start into your week. We have some good stuff that we're working on right now. So if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us on Discord. We're always there. Everybody from the foundation is reachable, and we are all just community members, right?
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, ultimately, it's really a community project, right? I think also this non-profit foundation is the closest you can get to a DAO in the old world, essentially.
That's true. Let's DAO it.
Yeah,
great.
I think DAOs are amazing. So then see you, everybody.
Thank you,
Also
guys.
from my
Bye-bye.
side. Ciao, ciao.